Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Indexer Office Hours. Today is the 12th of July, and this is 𝗨𝗨 67. So I see a few new faces, and so for all of those new faces, just to let you know, we love participation. And so if you want to get involved in the conversation, please do raise your hand or mention either your question or your engagement in the stage chat. This episode in particular is going to be one that's quite engaging, and we're going to ask a bunch of questions. And so, yeah, we'd love to hear your feedback. As we've established, this is being recorded and is going to be posted onto YouTube. So just bear that in mind as we progress through today's conversation. Yeah, we have a very exciting agenda today, which I'm very, very much looking forward to introduce to all of you. And just as a reminder, before we wrap up today's episode, we have a POAP for you. Just make sure to listen out for the secret word that will be mentioned at the end of the episode. So there you have it. I'm now going to move on into opening remarks, and I would like to discuss the 𝗨𝗨𝗂𝗧 podcast episode that was recently released. So this was number 72, and it was a special edition of 𝗨𝗨𝗂𝗧. It was an episode that was split into two parts. The first one with 𝗨𝗀𝗀 𝗨, who's the co-founder and director of engineering at 𝗨𝗨𝗂𝗀, and Sebastian, who's the CTO of Enzyme Finance. So they're both Graph Council members, and as you all know, Graph Council members are integral parts of the community. And in that conversation, they were discussing the state of dApp development, the Web3 stack, and just kind of generally exploring the opportunities for dApp developers as they are both engineers and have made significant contributions to the Graph protocol. And so if you're a developer, I would highly recommend listening to that episode. And the second part was just a handful of short interviews recorded on Graph Day with people from Edgenode, GraphJournauts, Data Nexus, and Messari. Today, we're really fortunate to have Vincent with us to speak a little bit about Messari and the fact that they've joined as a core developer. We'll discuss that later. So very, very much excited to get into that and discuss how that's relevant for indexers. So there you have it. That is opening remarks. Thank you all for listening. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Anna.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the repo watch. So just as always, if you haven't seen the agenda, please check it out. You'll see all of the release notes and PRs that I'll be talking about in the agenda. For clients that haven't had any new releases, we're not going to mention them, so do check the agenda for the latest releases. And I'm going to keep it really brief today because that's the information that I have. So on the major blockchain clients, we've only had one new release, so 2022-07-02 alpha. And this release includes mainly fixes for the consensus layer and JSON streaming re-enabled to prevent out-of-memory for request, plus other stability fixes. Everything else, all of the other clients, including the Graph stack, they haven't had any new releases. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask you guys if anyone has tried the new Aragon version. And if so, if you've had any good or bad experiences.
I think some people have had bad experiences with some test nets, but I've had good experiences with mainnet on a test deployment. Seems to be working okay there. I think Payne might as well. Might be running that too. He's not here today. But there's definitely been some issues on Rinkaby. But it's working fine on mainnet for the subgraphs I'm testing.
Thank you so much for saying that, Jim. Well, usually it's the other way around, so it's good that it's working on mainnet. Anyone else?
Yeah, we've so exactly what our upgrade provenance is, I can't detail. But we started syncing a few instances of Aragon Alpha, kind of when we started having this discussion in 𝗨𝗨𝗂𝗧. So it's been a couple of months. And as the Aragon 2 Alpha releases have come out, we've upgraded those. And I'm pretty sure that that kind of successive set of upgrades, some of which have been buggy, have basically broken our Aragon alpha state database. So yeah, I thought that was worth reporting. That being said, if you do a fresh sync from the latest release, 22.07.02, you shouldn't have any issues.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. Anyone else? If not, I will jump ahead and hand over to Protocol Watch.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
So for Protocol Watch, we're going to keep it brief. We only have a few updates. Starting with forum governance, there's a small update to GAP 35, which is the GraphQL live queries GAP. Mostly just a small comment from Adam regarding whether the gateway could be used as a pass-through instead of having to use it as a main focus of the upgrade, and just rely wholly on the graph node to implement the live queries. Then going into forum research, no new updates since last IOH. For the contracts repository, there are 4 PRs that are all linked to L2 scaling, mostly to document a few things here and there and rename some variables and some minor changes to the drip functions and stuff. Nothing major yet, but it's nice to see some progress there. And also no new updates for the network subgraphs. And I'll pass it on to Abel for the open discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So today, to introduce the open discussion, we have 2 parts of it. The first is an introduction from Vincent, who's kindly joined us today to talk a bit about 𝗨𝗀𝗧 and the grant that they received to be a core subgraph developer, and maybe talk a bit about how this is interesting for indexers and just the general kind of conversation around the work that they'll be doing and how that will lead to standardization in subgraphs, which is going to be hugely important going forward. And then the second part is going to be a discussion, an open discussion on Grafman. So discussion about what it is, how it works, how you can get the best out of it. And then we're going to flip it on you guys and ask you guys questions about, some of the challenges you're facing with it, how different commands that you would like to be introduced to help with your workflows, as well as, future suggestions for a future conversation, because there'll be another conversation on this topic with David next week. So without further ado, let's bring Vincent on to speak a bit about 𝗨𝗧𝗧. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Abel, for the introduction. My name is Vincent. I'm the engineering manager for the on-chain data team at 𝗨𝗧𝗧. So as many of you probably know, we received $12.5 million of grant from the Graph last month. And the major bulk of the work for that grant kind of divided into 2 parts. One is building a ton of subgraphs, high quality subgraphs for the space over the next 2 years. And we're hoping to build at least 200 subgraphs across the DeFi as well as Web3 space. And the second part of it is around standardization. That specifically, what that means is, today, when you look at different subgraphs, for example, subgraphs across lending protocols, let's say 𝗂𝗡 and Compound, while the 2 protocols function very similar in nature, their subgraphs look very, very different in terms of the schema definition, in terms of like how things are named, how things are defined. So as a user of these subgraphs, it's very difficult you have to spend a lot of time understanding what things mean, and kind of you have to like clean the data, mess around with the data. Sometimes you even have to go into the smart contracts to understand things. So as a power user of subgraphs, we want to make sure that process is very simple for the general public, especially for those who are not the most tech savvy. So what we are doing instead is we're introducing a standardized schema for each of the protocol category. Lending protocol, for example, will have one single schema for all of 𝗂𝗡, Compound, I don't know, Maple Finance, Euler, everything so that when the user wants to query a subgraph, they can use the same set of queries. They know exactly which what each of the field mean in the schema. So basically improving the user experience a lot. And so we've been building a lot of subgraphs lately. We have about 50 protocols, somewhere between 40 to 50 protocols already built, and that's over 160 subgraphs deployed across all the chains. So we have a lot of subgraphs, and we are going to slowly migrate them to the decentralized network as the different chains get supported. So everything lives in hosted service right now, but we'll gradually start on the migration. And yeah, in the process, we'll use a lot of the GRT that we got from the grant as a part of the curation signaling process. Hopefully I'll work with a lot of the people here when we start the migration.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm wondering if you could speak a bit about some of the challenges you faced as a team when dealing with these subgraphs, right? Because you kind of alluded to it earlier, but I'm curious to hear a bit more about some of the challenges you faced. Because as you alluded to, you sometimes have to get into the smart contract code and things like that. I'd be curious to kind of hear a bit more about the struggles there and how the work you're doing will fix that.
Definitely. So, the way our subgraph schema is designed, or the standard is designed, is that we are hoping to have a very complete coverage of each protocol, such that it could cater to all sorts of use cases. So that could range from like protocol level metrics, like TVL, revenue, usage, to pool level metrics, like liquidity in a pool, or like the return on a pool, or liquidity mining data. So to build these subgraphs, because we need to like aggregate a ton of data, we need to like really dive into the smart contracts to understand what's going on, to be able to kind of tell the difference between different forks, for example. So we have a fairly big team of subgraph developers working on building these subgraphs, and again, all of these are open source. They are on our GitHub repo. It's just github.com/𝗨𝗀𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗏s. And so during the process, one of the key issues is data validation, because there's so much data in there, and it's kind of difficult to just like eyeball the correctness of the data inside of subgraph playground. So what we did is we actually built out a massive data visualizer. It's hosted on subgraphs.xyz if you want to take a look at it yourself. But what it does is that it will pull like all the data, every single piece of metric from these subgraphs, and we'll either chart them or put them into tables to make it very easy for people to visualize. And then we also have a team of subgraph QAs to review all the subgraphs data to make sure that everything is correct, which data integrity is kind of the most important thing in the space. So that's the problem. Problem on the subgraph side, and then on the indexing, of course, many of you probably know, like indexing can be slow, depending on the size of the protocol or the chain it's deployed to. So especially for some of our subgraphs, it could take like months to sync. So we are actively investing in substreams to make that. Hopefully in the future to like significantly reduce the indexing time. And so we actually have a couple of our subgraph developers already start playing with substreams, and we're very excited by the performance improvements that it could enable. And we would love to be the first ones building and using substreams.
Very exciting stuff. So, if anyone wants to get involved or learn more, how would you recommend for them to engage with you and the rest of the team?
Feel free to add me on Telegram. It's or Discord. You all have my Discord ID is Vincent #8080, and more than happy to chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, very excited for what the future holds in that respect. So, without further ado, we're going to move swiftly on to the next section, which is all about Grafman. And we have Tiago to tell us more about what that is and how to get the best of it.
Hey, everyone. I hope everyone at least knows a little bit about Grafman and at least what it is and what it represents in the indexing scene. But yeah, I'm up to talking and discussing and showcasing all about Grafman today and the next index office hours. So should we begin with an overview of Grafman, or a more? Where should I start from, Abel?
Yeah, I would start off with an overview of Grafman because,
Okay.
as I'm aware, like a few folks are not utilizing it at the moment. So.
Oh yeah. So okay, Grafman is a short name of Graph Manager. So it's a command line utility that is built alongside GraphNode. So if you have built GraphNode, you have Grafman as a bonus. And if you even if you use GraphNode inside a Docker container, that container should probably have Grafman installed as well in the same path as GraphNode. And what Grafman does is actually it is a management tool to help indexers configure, set up, change some stuff, and change stuff around a single GraphNode instance. And yeah, it has a tree of subcommands. So you have commands for checking your configuration, you have commands for checking your network list, your chain list, your deployments. You can do some crazy stuff like grafting with Grafman. You can copy subgraphs around. You can check for bad blocks for when a provider sends you a block that is not actually the block on the rest of the chain agrees on. You can have commands to manage your block cache and a lot more. And yeah, so basically, Grafman is a tool that lets you configure and tweak a little bit around a single GraphNode instance. And as I said, it's built alongside GraphNode, which is particularly interesting because it means that being a Rust program as well, it makes use of the same code base and exactly the same functionality that exists in GraphNode is exported and used in Grafman. So whenever Grafman is doing any operation in your database or with your deployments, you can rest assured that it's the same code. It's actually the same code that GraphNode uses to do the same task. So our goal for Grafman is for it to hold all management tasks, all routines related to administering a single GraphNode instance. And part of that goal is expanding it to cover some use cases of the current indexing community. So we know that a lot of indexers has a lot of shell scripts and bash scripts to perform some tasks. And our goal is to move those is to first understand and identify those needs and transform them into tasks, into Grafman subcommands that can be run into a standardized way, in the most convenient way as possible. So a lot of Grafman commands deal with the database, which is not something that indexers can configure upfront, like creating indexes and updating indexes and deleting indexes. So Grafman has lots of subcommands to deal with them, and this prevents maintainers from accessing the database directly and avoids the risk of an undo command, like deleting all your data in the table or something unwanted. So we are within the Graph protocol. We aim to make Grafman the standard place to put those automated tasks. So that's and here is where we are at now. We have some subset of commands, of useful commands. We want to expand on that. I've already had some feedback on what some useful commands could be like, and the idea is that once we identify those needs, we work our way to make them into Grafman subcommands, and so the rest of the community can benefit from that. So that, I think that's maybe a super quick overview of Grafman. But yeah, in essence, everything you need to tweak about your Graph node instance, ideally it should be, if it's not via the configuration files, it should be through Grafman. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So what I've done is I've put a question into the stage chat. So if everyone would like to go to stage chat and vote yes or no on this question. And the question is, do you use Grafman today? Yeah, do you use Grafman today? So I'm curious to get a gauge of what that looks like. So as you can see, there's a poll right there. I see we are going up in yeses.
All right.
Okay. This is good. We got about oh yeah, an overwhelming amount of people said yes. Okay, great. Well, I'm curious to hear from the folks who don't use Grafman. So if you voted no and you're an indexer, please come on stage and share your thoughts as to what's preventing you from potentially using Grafman, or if you want to share in the stage chat, you're welcome to do so as well. Just curious to hear that perspective. So yeah, if anyone would like to do that, feel free to do that right now.
I can make a comment as a new Grafman user, and maybe a question at the end of it. One of the things I found really interesting when I finally got around to actually looking at it and using it in anger was that you can use it in two ways really at the moment. You don't have to go full fat Grafman with your, using it for configs for starting up your nodes, etc. From the beginning. You can actually integrate Grafman with your existing setup, whatever script you might be using, or systemd or containers, however you like to, get your stack up and running. You can still use it exactly as you would if it was fully integrated with the configs without causing any problems with your existing startup. That was the first thing that I found really useful. And also, if I'd known that, I would have tackled putting it in place a lot earlier. Grafman's been around for a while now. Obviously, 𝗨𝘀𝗲𝗄's done a lot of work on it since, but the documentation was extremely difficult to follow early on, and little tidbits like that they didn't exist in the documentation. So one of the questions I guess I would ask 𝗨𝘀𝗲 is, the one reason that I made the leap to finally get Grafman in place was to be able to remove subgraphs and reclaim, sometimes up to a terabyte off a really, really big subgraph that I was no longer syncing. And part of that is an exercise within Grafman, but part of it is also often an exercise in the database to do things like clear the ETH cache, for example. So does it make sense to have those types of exercises, the secondary parts of maybe removing a subgraph, also performed via Grafman, or do you feel like that's something that should always remain an external activity to Grafman?
I think that I think that removing a subgraph should be a Grafman task, and this is I would say that's the top ask for new Grafman commands. We have been reclaiming disk space is paramount to indexers. So I think that anything related to subgraph management should be part of Grafman. So if you want to completely remove a subgraph and its data, it should be a Grafman command. I'm not sure if the way it works now, because I haven't implemented those commands yet. Is that Grafman? It kind of unlinks the deployment from the index node, but it keeps data around. So I'm not sure if it's already removing data, but we are currently currently working on some new commands that will make that possible. We already have open issues for a Grafman prune command that lets you remove data from existing subgraphs without necessarily removing the subgraphs. You just remove old data that is seldomly queried. But yeah, I believe that commands such as removing subgraphs entirely, removing subgraphs data selectively, and removing ETH call cache should be part of Grafman, as some of those types of of tasks are already part of Grafman. We have a command to clear the block cache, for instance. So I see no reason why not having a command for clearing the ETH cache as well. So yeah.
Awesome. One other
Hey, Tiago.
Hey there.
Go ahead, Jim. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
Sorry,
off. Sorry,
Kai. I'll finish off. There's just one comment I wanted to make. Again, for those who are new to Grafman, the other thing that I realized when I spent some time with Payne on getting it up to, getting my stack integrated with Grafman, was that it's clear to me now that Grafman, the Grafman configs for your nodes are the critical way, really the only way we're going to effectively be able to scale properly, because it's got all of that interesting stuff around, database sharding, which, you can do all kinds of cool stuff with the config that you can't do otherwise, at least as per my understanding. So for anyone who is looking to scale their actual stack horizontally or whatever, Grafman is probably the way to express those configs.
Right on. Yeah, and if I'm not wrong, Grafman uses the same config file as GraphNode. So I would encourage everyone to use those configured TOML config files, because they allow you to be so much more expressive than just using environment variables and command line flags when using GraphNode. And as a bonus, you already get Grafman configured.
Hey, Tiago. So I had two questions, actually. So the first one is, what interface does Grafman use to to control GraphNode? Is it all done through RPC, or is there any sort of shared file RPC interface? And as a corollary, does it need to run in the same pod?
Yeah, currently Grafman it's built with the same source code as GraphNode, so it actually handles everything directly. So it's mostly accessing the same database. I think that you don't, since it uses the same configuration as GraphNode, I don't think it should be in the same pod, but you must have the configuration for the pod you're targeting, for the GraphNode instance you're targeting, and you can make Grafman read that configuration. And so whenever Grafman runs, it will connect to the database instance, and will try to talk with the GraphNode instance itself. So it's basically answering the question about interface. It's basically Postgres connection, and for management tasks, I don't think it ever needs to talk with GraphNode using the exposed GraphNode ports. So I think it's only a database connection. So yeah, but yeah, as I said, it's the same code. So it's probably the GraphNode binary and the Grafman binary, they share the same methods, the same functions, the same way of accessing data, which is mostly when we're talking about the indexing side, is mostly Postgres related. So it's probably a Postgres connection. Yeah.
Awesome. That's really helpful. So the second comment I'd like to make, we've used Grafman for a while actually, but we just recently ran into a situation wherein we needed to roll back the block ingester on our index nodes. That would be a huge value add if we could get that into Grafman one of these days, so we could just roll it back to a block number and away you go.
You mean like rolling back all deployments under a chain for a given chain, and like cleaning the block cache for that chain up to that point, right?
Yeah, I guess if that's all the block ingester is doing, then yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, for blocking, I don't know if we're talking the same thing when we say block ingesters, because we have the concept of block ingesters at the hosted service, which is a graph node that doesn't have any deployments assigned to it. It just indexes, just consumes, ingests blocks. That's the name. For that particular case, we have the Grafman chain. I have it on screen now. I think it's Grafman chain. What is truncate? There's Grafman chain truncate. It actually deletes the whole block cache for that chain. But I can see now that we don't have a subset of that command. We only have the option to remove the whole block cache, but not up to a given point in time. So I see that it's not that hard to implement, and I think it will be of great help. Like if I have a chain that has index up to block, I don't know, 200, and I want to keep only the first 50 blocks, so I would say like Grafman chain clear cache or something like that, and specify a block range, and you can remove all the blocks in that range. Would that be it, Kai?
Something like that, or kind of like how we have with the Grafman rewind command, but rewind for a specific chain. I'm looking at the chain command right now. I just see help, info, list, and remove. Am I looking at the wrong subsection?
The Grafman chain, the Grafman chain has like two some commands for removing and updating info. So you have the remove command that totally removes a chain. I'm not sure if the Grafman chain remove all deals anything with subgraph, but the Grafman chain truncate command completely deletes the block cache for a given chain. And let me just check if we have ranges for that. Yeah, and we have the Grafman check blocks commands that just updates the block range. So I think that for now, the best we currently have is the Grafman chain check blocks command that will you can specify a block range for it to work on, and for every block in that range, it will refetch that block with your providers and compare it with the block you have on your database, in your block cache. And if those blocks differ for any reason, you keep the latest block, the block that you just fetched. So I think that it's like a poor approach to this. Is a poor solution to that problem, where you can update your block, a specific block range. But for deletion, I don't think we have anything like exclusively for deletion, a command exclusive for deletion right now. So let me just check what the Grafman chain remove command does.
I think the scenario here is more, you know that something went wrong on, for example, Ethereum, and you basically need to rewind everything Ethereum related to block number, let's say 15 million, both the cache as well as all the subgraphs. And for the subgraphs, I know that you can do it individually. If you know that something went wrong in the data, because you have a corrupted node or something went wrong with a hard fork, it would be a lot easier that you can say Ethereum mainnet, roll back to block 15 million, and it does everything that is related to the Ethereum chain automatically. I think as we are growing in our infrastructure in terms of the number of subgraphs potentially and the amount of change, this will become something that we might need more and more, given all kinds of, like I said, corruption on the node or hard forks that went wrong or whatever. Just a simple command that says roll back this chain for X amount of blocks to this target block in one command, basically, rather than trying not to miss any of the steps or any of the subgraphs that you have.
That will be a very powerful command. I see. It will be effectively Grafman rewind, but for all subgraphs in a given chain, right?
And
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah. I think this is totally. I mean, it's totally doable, right? It's a good candidate for a new Grafman command. I like that. I really like that. I work on opening an issue for this. So I'll paste the issue link here on the Discord channel so we can bring everyone into discussing that. But I think that the command idea is not only powerful, but it seems very necessary as we expect on growing with more chains and more subgraphs, and I don't know how chain-specific apps or chain dApps with their own chains will definitely benefit from that as well. But yeah, it seems to me like a great new addition to the Grafman command tree.
Great idea.
Thanks for that.
Loving it.
And while we're talking about Grafman Rewind, I was wondering, how does that work nowadays? Because I know it used to be that you would give a block hash, block number, and subgraph, and then it would rewind that subgraph to that block number and block hash. But now I'm seeing that it's only a block hash and a block number with no subgraph specified. So how does Grafman Rewind work now?
I have to admit that I'm not up to date on the Grafman Rewind command. I have personally, I have never used it before, but I don't know if I can answer that specifically. We might want to save this one for David once he's back. But yeah, I'm sorry, no, I don't know the answer for that yet, but I can look it up and update you guys on the channel after this call.
Sorry, you mentioned the rewind one?
Yeah.
Because I don't think we removed the deployment hash parameter. I think it's exactly as it said, like block number hash and the QM hash of the deployment. Okay, well, I'm on Grafman 26.
What I'm looking at right now with Grafman 0.26 is that the rewind command has a block hash, a block number, which I believe they are exclusively optional, and you have a deployments array where I think you can specify multiple deployments, but not sure. I mean, I'm only reading the help command output. I'm not sure if that's how it works, but it says that it accepts an array of deployment identifiers. So
okay, well, maybe something's wrong with my Grafman compile, because I'm on 26.0 as well, and it's only giving me the block hash and block number.
Oh. Let me check which commit I am now. Yeah, I'm on commit it's a commit from today, 2F924. So commit 2F924 of July 12th. And yep, that's odd. Maybe we can, I don't know, debug this later, because I don't think this argument is tied to any feature flag or compilation flag, but we can dive into this and try to fix to figure out what's going on here.
For sure. Thank you.
Amazing. That's what IOH is all about. That's good to see.
Sorry, but I have a semi-related, suggestion I forget who asked the question. I think it was Kai asked the question that kind of clarified that Grafman is in fact, graph node and effectively talks to the database directly. And something that for me isn't ideal is that the kind of canonical management interface to GraphNode is a command line interface. I would much rather see GraphNode being able to run as a persistent process that exposes a GraphQL API that obviously a CLI could talk to, or obviously Grafman could run in CLI mode. But I think like having first-class support for managing the GraphNode instances programmatically via an API, I think is really important. Particularly, I kind of felt this way, but also listening to the conversation and like discussing, how to pass these arguments, into the command line interface. Like all of these problems would be, far more simple to reason about if there was a typed, self-documenting GraphQL API.
I see like Docker or Kubernetes stuff. Like it's like it's an ongoing process, and you interact with it using more let's say richer payloads, right, rather than command line instructions.
I didn't understand the question.
Oh no, yeah, I'm just saying that it would be something what you're saying would be something similar to what we see on Docker and Kubernetes, where you have like a long-lasting process, and that process exposes an interface for you to talk to, and it's not like run directly, right? So
yeah, exactly.
I see that.
Basically being able to seamlessly compose into Grafman or kind of GraphNode management tasks is the objective. And kind of today, obviously, you need to like spawn an executable.
Yeah, and Grafman does the same setup as GraphNode. So when you run any Grafman command that interacts with the database, you see the exact same logs, which is actually starting up a similar process, a similar startup process of like GraphNode. But yeah, there's a lot of overhead. I would say there's a little overhead when starting Grafman because of all this. It has to instantiate some of the very same constructs that GraphNode uses internally. Yeah, that's true.
Just to further build off of Chris's comment, I know that within GraphNode today there is an administrative GraphQL interface, but it's just read only. And then there's also a JSON RPC that does some administrative tasks. I'm not sure exactly what.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so perhaps the most holistic thing to do would be to take the functionality that's currently in the JSON RPC, fold that into the GraphQL endpoint as a mutation, and maybe start to fold some of the Grafman functionality into additional mutations to that GQL administrative interface. That would be slick and really cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I can see that working. Yeah, I'm not sure how big of an effort would be to transform GraphNode as to be this kind of service, but I can see that I can see that working and using GraphQL instead of command line arguments to summon Grafman tasks and to a lot to think about this, but I think it's definitely it's something that is a possibility, but I'm not sure. I don't think I can estimate the efforts to make that happen, especially regarding stuff like, I don't know, Grafman currently prints stuff to standard output, would be like an entities all typed. Yeah, I can see a typed interface of message passing around any any client could implement to talk with this graph node administrative interface. Yeah,
this is kind of the paradigm that the indexer stack follows, where there's the indexer management API that that indexer agent exposes, and then the CLI, just provides a command line interface over that GraphQL API. And you kind of get the best of both worlds in providing this easy to use interface, for people who kind of just want to do basic command line interactions, but under the hood is this strictly typed, descriptive API that you can integrate with if you want to.
This is something it's really amazing, and lots of possibilities. So, as you said, to integrate with different tools and not only a command line interface, but I don't know, a web interface or any other products that one might want to create a new a graph node dashboard or something like that.
Boy, wouldn't that be neat?
And then one other feature that I think would be useful for the future would be like right now I'm trying to figure out how to copy a indexed subgraph from one indexer to another indexer, and for me personally right now it's because I'm running two, but also in the future I think there's been talks of like potential kind of like market being created for indexed subgraph or indexers that have indexed subgraphs to be able to basically sell that index data to other indexers so that they can get up and running faster instead of having to reindex everything from scratch. And so right now I'm having some issues, and I think there's some extra steps that I need to do in that process of transferring the data. And if Grafman could just do that through like, a single command or whatever, that would be a lot easier probably.
I see. Like sharing the index data between indexers, right?
Yeah.
I guess to clarify. Sorry, Jim.
I was just going to say it opens up a huge number of use cases, 20 more on top of what Vincent has suggested. It's a big one for me too. For maybe you want to sync things somewhere where you've got very cheap compute, and then you want to bring the index subgraph to somewhere else where you have much higher much lower latency, something like that. There's many use cases where that would be extremely useful.
I just wanted to clarify that if we think about the interface of this, just to try and make it real in everybody's heads, it would be maybe something like an import export where it's like Grafman subgraph export this ID, you get something like a SQL dump out, and then there's an import or a restore command to do the opposite. Is that what you're thinking, Vince?
Yeah, that is kind of what I'm thinking, and right now I'm trying to do basically that with like PG dump and PG restore, but I'm having some issues with proof of indexing and determinism and all that. So
yeah, that was something that I was thinking about, how POIs be handled in that case. But I mean, it shouldn't be a blocker. I think we could. Yeah, this is up for the community and for the protocol to reason about. Once the idea gets traction, we can discuss how to handle POIs after. But I like the import-export approach that Chris was talking about. It sounds like, for people who are used to do PG dumps, it's would be the same process. I just don't know what to do with the POIs in that.
Is the POI issue because of indices?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
I was just wondering if the POIs are something, and I don't know a lot about POIs, but I don't know if the POIs from an indexer would fit for a different indexer. Would that be in case of arbitration problems? Would it be okay for an indexer A to use POIs from indexer B? I'm not sure.
The POIs
doubt
in the
it.
database will be maybe normalized is the wrong word, kind of like raw. Like all of those intermediary POI entries, I don't think are indexer specific. It's at POI generation time when you call the graph node endpoint that you pass in the indexer address to hash into the POI.
Okay.
Yes. One currently already has a feature to move or copy subgraphs between shards, right? So I'm wondering what is missing from that feature that is not fulfilling the use case that is being presented here from copying it from one data center to another, because my understanding that's already possible.
Yeah, I don't know the details about copying subgraphs around. I think that would be David's David's department. But I know that it's possible to copy copy indexed data from subgraphs around. So you can, with the sole purpose of speeding up sync times. But yeah, I'm not sure how they work in practice, and I've never witnessed such an operation happening in front of me. But yeah, in theory, we can already transfer subgraph data between two databases. Yeah, I'm not sure what's the required work to transfer subgraphs between indexers, but yeah, maybe there's that's not that far away from what we have now.
Yeah, I guess additionally the question becomes around the Ethereum call cache data is stored somewhere. I don't know how it works with sharding, and if you can actually say, okay, also copy my call cache, or get fresh call cache data into this new database.
Well, you don't really need the call cache. It would just speed things up, right? So if you don't have the call cache, it'll just rerun those calls. But you can certainly just copy the call cache table. Also, the POI tables, it's just a table that needs to be dumped out. So if you're having issues with dumping the whole subgraph database with the POIs, then maybe that's something we need to look at, because that shouldn't be a problem.
I mean, the biggest problem in using Postgres export import is that it's ridiculously slow. I would say that's potentially the biggest hurdle to take, and I don't know what kind of alternatives there are.
Yeah, it's a little tough to avoid that. Yeah, especially with a big subgraph, it might take a couple of days to copy the whole thing, especially with building indices.
Yeah, especially the import is absurdly slow.
Even using those I don't know, binary PG dump formats, it's still slow. I'm not. It's been a long time since I restarted a big dump, but yeah, I know you can export and dump in plain SQL, or you can use like this binary compressed format, but I'm not sure if that helps a lot or not.
Yeah, I'm testing on that level actually, but yeah, it seems to be that it's all single core based, the export and the import, and my guess is that is where it's getting its bottleneck.
Definitely worth making sure that the indices are not defined with the table definition, and only defined after all of the data has been imported. Because obviously, if they're defined beforehand, then every write incurs the cost of rewriting the index.
Yeah. Usually on such operations, you indices load the data, and then you turn indexes on again, or even create them again, and so you can rebuild indexes in only one go. So
cool. Any final questions or things anyone would like to bring up in relation to this topic before we wrap up today's conversation? I'm going to take that as a no. So I'll take this opportunity to wrap up today's conversation and also say that if you guys feel like this was valuable, we are considering doing another episode next week focused on Grafman again, but with video sharing and also David a part of the conversation. So if there's any other topics you guys would like to cover in relation to Grafman, please do share. Thank you all for engaging in today's conversation. Thank you to Thiago and Vincent, who's no longer with us, for contributing. I just want to say thank you, Vincent. Thiago, if you have anything to say.
Oh yeah, I just want to thank for talk about Grafman. I've been able to create a few comments, not much as David's, but I'm always eager to learn from the community. And I think that all the examples that we discussed today are already super useful. I'll do my part and put them on to this over discussion on the Agile Node side. So maybe we can already start discussing them as issues. But please, if you guys have any more Grafman comments, ideas, suggestions, anything that you think has a chance to be automated, please share your ideas. Maybe we can put it together as a Grafman command so everyone can benefit from it. If you already have those crazy shell scripts running around and would like to compile them as a Grafman command, so we can have like a unified way of doing this task, like what would be the correct way to perform such tasks within GraphNode without having to directly access databases and stuff. Please share. It will be amazing if we could grow the subset of Grafman commands. And I would love to see Grafman evolve, not only by a subset of commands, but as a tooling, as an interface, as we discussed today. And I think it was a great new point of view over this Grafman command. So Grafman as an interface, it's awesome. And Grafman with lots of more useful commands, it's also would be really beneficial for everyone. So yeah, thanks for sharing, and please keep sending the ideas. Amazing. And thanks for the opportunity to be talking here today.
Yeah. No, thanks is all to you for sharing your perspective. And yeah, that's what IOH is all about, like having an open discussion about interesting things that are related to indexing. So thank you all for attending. As we always do at the end of the episode, we have a secret word for you. And that secret word is all lowercase and the dashes between each word. It's effort 8 hotel. That's effort -8 hotel. And 8 is spelled in a word way. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining today's conversation. I learned a lot. I hope you guys did too. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you all again next week. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.